Hey everybody, what's going on? My name is Drew.
And I'm Chase.
And today we're going to be reviewing some music. We decided on going off of a year. So this first episode, we're going off the year 2002. And what we decided on was the Eminem show from Eminem.
And then I picked Wilco's Yankee Hotel Foxtrot.
So that's what we both listened to. We're just kind of gonna go over the albums and kind of gonna see if there's any similarities, kind of point out the differences, and just kind of go from there. We're just trying to be a little creative while all this craziness is going on. So yeah, you had some interesting facts about kind of
Yeah.
both
So
of these.
obviously, they were both released in 2002. They're both from the Midwest. Wilco being out of Chicago, and then Eminem obviously being Michigan, Detroit, and stuff. What I found interesting was that it was actually both their fourth albums. Like Wilco, some of the members had been in another band called Uncle Tupelo, and they had done albums and stuff. And then Wilco also worked on a collaborative project with Billy Bragg. So it's not like truly their fourth album, but like as a Wilco studio album, it was like their true fourth album. And same thing with Eminem. He did like collaborations, with like the Bad Meets Evil and stuff later on and stuff. But like, and then what I found interesting too is like they're both now just released their 11th album. So I thought that was kind of interesting. They like not knowing any similarities about them, but doing this and then looking at that and being like, whoa, like both was their fourth album in 2002. And I think Eminem's came out 2020. His Music to Be Buried too.
Yeah,
right?
Murdered by.
Yeah. And then theirs was, I think, late December last year.
Okay.
Ode to Joy was their most recent release.
So yeah, very similar timeline and trajectory of things. Yeah, that's interesting for sure. So for me, the Eminem show was kind of like very impactful. I was probably like 11 years old or something when that came out. And I definitely remember like watching TRL and like waiting for Sing for the Moment. And around that same time, 8 Mile was just released. So Eminem was kind of at a height of his career when the Eminem show came out. And I found it pretty interesting. There was 7 singles released. I mean, it was a pretty long album. It had 20 songs, including the skits and everything. But to have 7 singles, I just found was pretty remarkable. Like, I think that says something right there.
That's like when I put it on when we were talking about doing this, I was like, oh, I remember this one. And was knowing all the words. And I probably haven't listened to it in years
exactly.
now. But I was like, oh, that was such a big song. And then the next one came out. Oh, that was such a big song.
Another big song. Yeah, it just kept going. Like Curtains Up skit.
Upbeat.
I think White America skit, but I think White America.
It's a banger. It's like, it's just upbeat. It's just like, sending a message, and it was definitely like a good start to a record for sure.
Yeah, and then it even addressed some of his like concerns about using his white privilege or whatever you want to say, saying like, oh, is my skin starting to benefit me now? Like, just pointing to that being kind of predominantly in a black kind of music, and then just trying to, I'm sure because there was a big benefit during that time, having that crossover, having a white audience and benefiting from that. So
I don't know if it's in that one, but where he's talking about like every black fan that he's got is probably from Dre, and then every white fan
that he's got
is because of him. So it's like the trade-off. And then I thought it was also interesting, it's not on White America, but it's I forget on the actual track, but he mentions like he's like not the first to have like basically gotten wealthy off of black music like since Elvis. So
that was in Without Me.
Without Me. So it's just funny because he kind of has a recurring theme like going through it and stuff, and obviously like he had controversy, so he is addressing a lot of that on this album.
Yeah.
And yeah, for sure, it's a great way. I mean, I read something when I was looking into it, is like this album he like kind of wanted to take, like, obviously it's a hip-hop album, but he was like influenced by like 70s rock.
Definitely.
Which is obviously like my like favorite genre. But like you can see that with kind of how anthems are kind of like in the album itself. Like they got these bigger choruses, which like I don't know, I don't feel like Eminem's had the biggest choruses prior to that, really.
Yeah, he learned kind of how to adapt his music to stage performances. Like he saw himself kind of in a bigger light, so he made his songs bigger, like he was performing to arenas, which is eventually kind of where he got, you know. So yeah, that's definitely interesting. So White America is definitely one of my favorites. And then another one skipped down a few was Say Goodbye Hollywood. Like I really liked that one. It was addressing kind of a lot that was going on. It was kind of addressing some of his drug use a little bit. I know you had mentioned prior to the conversation that he didn't really mention too much drugs, but I think he touched on it a little bit here. And then also kind of dealing with the court cases going on and all of that. I thought this was kind of a good storytelling song about kind of everything that was going on.
It's definitely, you can see the pressure is like mounting on him for fame, for sure. He's like he references it constantly throughout the album. It's like the weight of things on his shoulders. He's like, am I gonna let it crumble? Am I gonna like fumble? Like he's like it's a lot of the same metaphors, and it's like for this example, it's about fame and it's about like being in like the press and all of that, whereas like, you know, some of the other songs are, you know, his relationship, being a father, like all these other things that are causing the like a different stress and like way for him to feel like the weight of the world is on his shoulders. But yeah, this one's really good because it's the typical more money, more problems kind of like story that he's...
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, this was kind of at the peak of his fame where he was just blowing up, and then he couldn't go grocery shopping. He felt like he was just trapped in a little bubble, and I think he mentions it on that song where he feels like the boy in the bubble who could never adapt or something like that. So yeah, that's a good one. And then probably my favorite, which was probably the biggest off of the album, I mean, I can't say for a fact, but Sing for the Moment, I mean, it had the Aerosmith sample, and
going back to the whole like 70s rock, that
exactly,
and Till I Collapse has the like Queen stomp stomp clap, like,
is that what that is?
Yeah, it's a Queen sample. So it's We Will Rock You essentially. But I mean, you know, that's very like worked in there well, because it's not like, obviously the Sing for the Moment is like, you know it right when you hear it, that guitar and stuff. It's Aerosmith. Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that's, I don't know, I mean, Cleaning Out My Closet's probably a little bigger in my opinion, but Sing for the Moment's second, I think. I think Cleaning Out My Closet was such a massive song. Like, I don't know, they're probably right there. I'm sure you can look at statistics of what was like, I don't know if they were both released as singles, which was a more like
successful, had the numbers,
but either way, it's like to have both those songs on one album is,
I don't know, I just think me personally, I related more with Sing for the Moment. For sure. Just like I said, his storytelling is just kind of second to none when it comes to music. Like the way he can just paint a picture and just kind of put you there and make you feel certain things, and just kind of describe a situation, and yeah, being like a teenager or just on that cusp, like having that angst and that anger kind of towards everything. It was a very good kind of outlet that kind of seemed to express a general feeling towards, it could be kind of related to anybody, you know?
For sure.
So that's kind of what I liked about it. And that was probably done on purpose, even though he's always very personal, but it can also be like very broad as well.
Yeah, and that's, again, it's going back to like, especially in that song too, it's like the pressures of being someone with something to say, and it's like, you know, in the lyric, it's like these kids hang on every single statement we make, and it's like, it's kind of reflecting like, you know, like we're entertainers, we're saying things, and like we're singing for you guys too, but at the same time, it's like then the parents and everyone kind of comes back to them and is like, well, like he says, can it load a gun and cock it too?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, no, these are words that we're saying, you know, and I mean, that it's like very still relevant how things are being said, and it's like, you know, you don't want to like offend anyone or anything like that, but at the same time, it's like, he's speaking from a place of like where he was coming from and stuff. And yeah, if like a kid is taking Eminem seriously, like, and like gonna go get a gun and stuff and like threaten to kill his like wife, like,
and like, you know, back at his previous albums, killing his wife or sticking needles in his eyeballs, or like, you know, it's just metaphor. Like, he's just talking, he's just rapping, it's just art, you know. So yeah, you can't take things too seriously, but at the same time, he does get very personal as well. Yeah,
and I think that reflects definitely, because it's like he's like, he feels he's being sued, he's being like he's dealing with courts and stuff like that, like in the, I think, white American Congress is like
trying to censor him,
censoring him and all these things. So it's
dealing with Kim and her cheating or whatever, and that whole situation, and then going to court for all that stuff. And it was a crazy time, but that kind of like leading with that personal stuff, I like, this might be a little surprising, but I liked Haley's song, the one where he kind of, in my opinion, this might have been the first time where he actually attempted singing,
right,
and like actually kind of messing around with that kind of format. And again, talking about the personal thing, it's just about that relationship and everything. And I found that one might be a little underrated, but I really kind of liked that one. I liked how he was at the height of his career. He kind of was doing something a little different and trying to expand and just do something a little different.
Yeah, definitely.
Without Me, it's a good song, and of course it's a, you know, one of the massive hits, but to me it just wasn't one of my favorites on the album.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know what it was, but it's just, he maybe too comical, or because I can only equate it, or I always equate it with the video.
Mm-hmm.
And the video was just too cheesy for me, like with the Batman and Robin dynamic and all of that. So that one was a little tough for me. Another one was Square Dance. It's a good song.
Yeah.
But it's just one that it's like.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it and stuff from back, like listening to it back in the day and stuff. But yeah, when I was listening to that, I was like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I think this is like his best complete work.
Body of work, yeah.
And so like those songs, like, like the content on like the other two, like Superman and Drips, like
that's what I was gonna get to next. Drips, I don't see any purpose or reason or how it fits into the album. Like, what is it doing there? Like,
but I do understand, because it is referencing back to Kim, and like,
no, I think it's about somebody completely different. Yeah, and it's like this chick at the cleaners or something. I think Obi Trice mentions it, like the chick Denise or something at the cleaners. So it's like, is this storytelling? Is it real? Like, that goes back to like, can we take it seriously?
Yeah.
So that was just a song to me that I was like, I don't understand why it's even on the album. And I, even growing up listening to it, I was like, it was funny back then, but I don't see the point of it.
Well, I think too, I think also, I mean, and that kind of does like, take you back to like a Detroit like kind of like trailer park kind of like vibe for sure in that song.
Oh yeah.
And
like a grimy, dirty feel. Yeah,
for sure. And it's like, you know, that is something real, especially as a celebrity. Like STDs are, you know,
a real thing. Yeah.
And so I mean, I guess in that sense it's worth like shining a light on, but yeah, overall it's like I'm not really like wanting to listen to that.
No.
Same thing with Superman. I see the point in it because it's, again, he's blowing up, he's getting more famous.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's with women and stuff like that.
And he's like, I can't save you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be the one,
we're here to use each other, essentially.
Exactly.
For, stuff. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so what were your favorites, and then it sounds like those were kind of your least favorites right there.
Yeah.
Was there any overlaying?
No, so Sing for the Moment, definitely.
Yeah.
One we missed, or we kind of just went over, Business, I thought was a great song.
Yeah. That was one of the singles too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was the last single released from the album.
Yeah. And then definitely Say Goodbye to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Soldier was okay.
Yeah, Soldier was good.
Yeah, it's a solid track, but definitely like I think Till I Collapse and My Dad's Gone Crazy are both bangers. Like Till I Collapse is just like gets you pumped, and Nate Dogg just crushes the chorus.
Exactly.
And but yeah, I think the third verse on My Dad's Gone Crazy is like really actually good. Like the first two, it's catchy, it's funny, but like I think he actually like does some of the best rapping at the end of that song. It's the last verse on the album.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, what you were saying about cleaning out my closet. I think that's some of the most perfect rapping.
Yeah.
That song is almost flawless.
Right.
Like it is just, man, he is just in that groove, and it's just like flows so well. But so that's some of our favorites and kind of our least favorites from the Eminem show.
And just one last thing, like the skits are what they are. Like I think they bring it's called the Eminem Show for a reason. I think they do bring something to the album.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm never gonna just go like listen to this skit, because I mean I think it's a body of work, like the album itself. So it's like, you know, I'm like, you know, you can listen to the songs individually, but you're not going to go listen to the skits, you know? Yeah. And then I just thought it was funny at the very end, you know, he brings back Ken Kniff to close the show. Yeah. And it's like, just like, so weird. But the skits of like, it's funny because you know it's being done in a recording studio, but the one where he's like, get under the car, like he makes, like you just envision it so well. Like it is a show, it is a movie. He did bring you into his life, even though it's like
you're at the parking lot, like in the car, ducking down.
You feel like you need to duck too. It's definitely, they do it so, he does it so well and stuff, and just adds that kind of like a layer to it that just makes it you know, like one of those albums. And then for him to have released that album and then, you know, Lose Yourself a couple months later, which is probably even bigger than Cleaning Out My Closet.
Probably his biggest.
That's probably the biggest hip hop song ever, in my opinion. And that's, again, like
people wish they wrote that song.
Yeah.
Like I've heard that from a couple people. Like, oh, what's the song you wish you wrote? I've heard a couple people say Lose Yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's like one of those, one of those once in a lifetime songs for sure.
For sure, yeah. It definitely captured not only the movie, but his career, just, everything.
Yeah, so moving on to Wilco. Before we get super into it, I just want to say this. I think it's pretty funny because yesterday I listened to the album for the first time, and then after that I threw on Steve-O's new podcast, and he had on the comedian Bert Kreischer. And they were talking, and then at some point in the interview or the podcast, Bert, he mentioned something like, "Oh yeah, you know, you like it's good when you pick a guy or pick an artist or something and you see them win. And then he mentioned Wilco as being one of his favorite bands ever.
Interesting.
So I thought that was like a really
Is he a Midwest guy?
He's from Florida, but he's kind of, he's toured all over and he's always like, he's pretty open to a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought it was really random. Like I just got done listening to the album. Went to YouTube, threw that on, and then like halfway or 3/4 of the way into the interview, he mentions that. I was like, no way, man, that's interesting.
Yeah, and this album's interesting. So when I kind of suggested it, it was like I really like it. I've liked it for a while, but then like even I was listening to it, and I'm like, this is probably like a pretty hard album to start with for them because it's very like experimental, not only in the music, and then I was looking at it, or like breaking it down a little bit more, and I'm like, yeah, this took me a few listens to really get into and really start understanding the concepts and like start breaking down. So I was like, yeah, for someone, especially you that doesn't listen to a ton of like indie, alt country, whatever, I was like, oh man, this was kind of a hard one. But like, after like looking into it, like seeing some of the parallels, I'm like, it kind of was cool to like pick something like, because comparing it to Eminem's so straightforward. This is very like poetic and ambiguous in the lyrics and the delivery and stuff, and whereas Eminem's so noisy and loud, sounds constantly, whether it's a siren in the back. This leaves a lot of room for space and emptiness, and kind of gives him a lot of like room to kind of think about what is being said in the words. And it incorporates a lot of like experimental kind of instrumentation. Like they kind of like in the first song, I'm Trying to Break Your Heart, like it starts off like very simply, builds up, and then they like break it down, like, and then it kind of is this strung out like emptiness for a little bit, and then it builds back up. And the opening lyrics, I am an American aquarium drinker. I assassin down the avenues. Like, what is that really saying? Like, I mean, I think he struggled with alcohol a lot. So I think not that anyone should be advocating for drinking and driving, but it's, again, a very real thing. And I think that's a lot of what this album is like, how he's trying to communicate things to people and being honest with himself and being honest with just the anxieties of like kind of life and communicating how you feel to people and stuff, which is very, something we all deal with and relate to and experience and stuff. And then, I mean, the other one that's great is Heavy Metal Drummer.
That was one of my favorites too. I really liked that one. It kind of felt nostalgic and just kind of had that feel to it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, nostalgia just works for songwriters.
Yeah.
A lot of like people say, oh, it's the easy scapegoat and it's the easy like way out. Just write about nostalgic, but it works. Like it captures a feeling. Like playing Kiss covers. Stoned, like exactly. That kind of sums up like playing in a band and having your youth and all that.
And like you were saying at the top of this, this was a little bit of a tough album to kind of get into. Don't get me wrong, it was pretty solid like music wise, but the second time I listened to it, it was a little bit better. And I think, like you said, I think it'll take a few listens to kind of actually grow on you. But, it's very, like you were saying, somber, experimental. Those were a couple of the notes I wrote down. And, Heavy Metal Drummer was one that I really enjoyed. Another one was Radio Cure. I really liked that one. To me, it felt like it was like listening to music or listening to the radio and kind of like having a specific song or something come on where it just kind of hits you and like makes everything better, or kind of like describes a certain situation that you can relate to or something like that.
Yeah, and I mean that one again. It's some of the words he's using. I'm like, I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Yeah.
Like, it says like, my mind is filled with silvery stars, honey kisses, clouds of fluff. Like,
Yeah, I don't understand.
I don't know if that's drugs or.
I think that's because I was looking up some of the lyrics, and I think that is kind of what they said it was alluding to, but I don't think that's confirmed from.
Right.
Then I think it's
Yeah.
just people's interpretations of what's going on, but
And I think too with some of it, it's like, no, sometimes you can't like think too hard about it, and like it could just be words that work kind of thing. I mean, I think most of the time, like, I mean, he's in it, Jeff Tweedy is the main singer songwriter. He's an acclaimed singer songwriter, so I think he has purpose behind everything he's saying.
mm-hmm.
But like, when it is like up to the listener to interpret, it can take on its own meaning. And that's sometimes when I like when singers or artists aren't so straightforward, and you can kind of develop your own meaning of what it means and your own understanding and stuff. And what I was saying before too is like, this album was originally supposed to be released on 9/11.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But then there was some problem with the label and stuff, and they ended up streaming it online like a week later. So right after 9/11 happened and stuff, and there's a couple songs on there that foreshadow kind of, or like could be seen to have some sort of like resemblance to the events. In the song Jesus, etc. It says like, tall buildings shake, voices escape, singing sad, sad songs. I think that kind of like could be seen by, if you listen to it after what had happened with 9/11, people being like, oh, but Jeff Tweedy has said, no, these songs were written well before that happened.
Yeah.
And like, they have no real like
Connection with
connections to it. So but then they have War on War.
Yeah.
And then they have Ashes of the American Flag, which those are all kind of like things that were going on.
Yeah, exactly.
By the time it was released, they were all things like kind of in people's like heads, of like patriotic America coming back together and stuff, and like flags being burned and stuff like that because of just the country's state. But it's an interesting album for sure, because every time I listened to it, and it had been a while since I had listened to it, but when I looked up a counterpart album to the Eminem show in 2002, that one popped up, and I was like, oh, that's the one I want to like kind of dig deeper into.
Yeah.
And stuff. And I think the rest of their stuff is a little bit more like straightforward and like kind of like easier to digest, but I think that's kind of what makes, and this album's like one of their best acclaimed albums. It's one of their like best selling, and I think they play a lot of these songs live from the album. I think there's some fan favorites and stuff like that, so it's pretty cool to have like a more experimental ambiguous kind of album that still like holds resonance with a lot of people, as opposed to just the straightforward kind of tunes.
It was a interesting album. Do you happen to have the track list up, or could I?
It's
because there was a couple that
I'm the Man Who Loves You. That's a great one too.
That was
talking
the
about
one.
writing a letter to but he's like looking at the page and really like doesn't know what to write, essentially.
Exactly.
Or like the words he's saying are the wrong words. It's not gonna
come out right. And
it's not gonna give the feeling of, I think what he says, like, I want to take your hand and like make you understand kind of thing. He would rather like talk in person, but you know, you think back to 2002, technology wasn't quite what it is today.
Yeah.
And so like writing letters was probably more of a way of getting your information across and stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, it might not capture that feeling that, you know, what you can say in person sometimes. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, and I think that's a big thing, like on this album is like communication and, yeah, just being honest and getting what you need to say across.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last, those last 5 or so songs were really solid, like Pot, Kettle Black.
It's great, yeah.
Really good one. And then Reservations, the last one, I thought was really good. Again, that was a more experimental one, and then it kind of had this kind of long, lengthy end to it. But yeah, I did find the last bit of the album pretty solid and a good listen all the way through, even though it was, like you were saying, it had a very somber feeling to it, but a couple of those, like Heavy Metal Drummer, were a little more upbeat and kind of more, giving that type of feel. But yeah, I did like how it ended with that kind of lengthy, drawn out. I thought it was fitting because the intro was the same.
Kind of the same, yeah.
Feeling,
yeah. There's a couple songs throughout that kind of like, I think it's Radio Cure that, I think that one kind of has like a static-y kind of ending to it. Mm-hmm. And so there's a couple like things that they're like I was saying earlier, is like, they're all almost like essential like folk pop songs at their essence, and then like they took the very poetic, ambiguous lyrics and then like broke the songs out to stretch that. So it's like, if they were all like 2-minute simple like folk songs, it would probably make more sense, but then they like broke it down and twisted it, experimented with the textures and all of the layering of like, the keys and like different instrumentation and string arrangements and stuff like that that definitely made it what it is.
Yeah. So that's I couldn't really pick out really any similarities necessarily between the two albums side by side, but I do find it interesting that there are some of those parallels that were kind of on the behind the scenes type thing.
Yeah. And like, both of them did, from what I was reading, both had some issues with being released. So it's like theirs was, like I said, supposed to get dropped on September 11th, but problem with the label, they streamed it online, and then it wasn't properly released until April. Whereas the Eminem show had a different problem, where it wasn't him having a problem with the label or anything, but it got pirated. Yeah. And so it was like getting leaked out, and so they were like, let's just release it. Interscope just ended.
Fast track. Hey.
Yeah, we were like, all right, we'll just release it now. And so they actually came out, they were supposed to come out like, 6-7 months apart, but they ended up coming out like, Wilco came out, I think, like April 23rd, and then the Eminem show came out like May 26th. So like
very similar,
very close timing when they both were supposed to be at different times, and both are like kind of their acclaimed albums from what's been said about them for sure. So that's like, that's similarities. And I think the only other thing I would say is that they are both introspective. Like they both are looking at the self.
Definitely, yeah.
Which I mean, most music is. I mean, they're looking at their own lives, and but yeah, it's like Eminem's very much to the point. Like he's giving you every last detail, like in drips. Like you might not want it.
Yeah, exactly.
But and then you have the very obscure, like what does this kind of mean from Wilco? So, but yeah, both I think do a good job at what they're doing for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that'll do it, and we'll try and do this again. Pick a new year,
yeah,
and go from there. Until next time, peace.